So Michael Shermer, he's the executive director and founding publisher of Skeptic magazine. I think you received some copies as you walked in. He's also a monthly columnist for Scientific American and a adjunct professor at Claremont Graduate University and hopefully at Chapman in the near future. His latest book is The Mind of the Market, about evolutionary economics. He also wrote Why Darwin Matters, Evolution and the Case Against Intelligent Design, and The Science of Good and Evil, and Why People Believe Weird Things. And his next book is going to be The Believing Brain. Michael.
Thank you. I will try to stick to a classical clock instead of a relativistic clock. So, is there an ultimate reality? Just out of curiosity, how many of you here in the audience think the answer is no, there is not an ultimate reality? If I could just see a show of hands. Okay, great, because after the event tonight, we're going to run an experiment, because this, I claim, is a testable hypothesis. We're going to go to the roof. We have cameras to record the experiment. We have data recorders to record this. And we're going to push you off one by one. And if you truly believe there's no ultimate reality, your non-existing atoms will pass mysteriously through the non-existing atoms of the ground, and you will not be hurt. End of story. So
I checked, they're calling me from risk management.
Risk management, yes.
They approved the experiment, so we won't be able to do that, sorry.
How's your insurance policy? I'm trying to do firewalks at institutions. They don't want to do that either. Anyway, so... okay, so I'm a materialist, a monist. I'm not a dualist. I think humans are by nature dualists, that we think that there's an extra substance, a soul, a spirit, an agent, a hidden force, some kind of energy, a god, a gods, whatever. But that's a product of our brains misperceiving the world and infusing into it these hidden, invisible agents that we think are there that aren't really there. And you know I'm right because... because I'm a published skeptic anyway. So if you get a brain injury, if you get a stroke, particularly dramatically Alzheimer's or senility or dementia, as the neurons die one by one, so does your mind. There is no mind. The mind is just one of these fuzzy words that gets thrown about, that if we try to operationally define it carefully, we find we're just describing what the brain does. So mind is just a word to describe what the brain does. The soul is just a word, a fuzzy word, to describe our pattern of information, our memories, and our essence and our being, which dies when we die, and so forth. It's no more mysterious, by the way, where you go after you die than where you were before you were born. Why does nobody get all fussed up about, well, where was I before I was born?
I think Deepak does.
Well, actually, that's right. He does. You're right. Anyway, so...
I've had this argument with him in previous lifetimes.
I've won those, too. Anyway, so... I think as the brain dies cell by cell, so does your mind, your essence, your being, your soul. And you all know that. That's absolutely right. So if you're right, Deepak, that somehow the mind exists somewhere else, where did Aunt Millie's mind go when her brain died? Or whatever.
Or before.
Is it out there in some substrate, some quantum computer in some other alien universe? I mean, this just gets to be just pure fantasy. Now, I think there's much to be said about this quantum mechanics and the observer. I guess what bothers me, and when I say Deepak, I mean Team Deepak, anybody that's... What bothers me about it is two things that bother me about it. First is it's putting us back in the center of the universe. It's like Copernicus toppled us off the pedestal, and then Darwin toppled us off the pedestal, and then Freud, and then Einstein, and so on. And now here it is. We want to pull us back in. We are the center of the whole thing. In quantum mechanics, you have to have an observer. And why is the observer always us? Of course, it doesn't have to be us. It's any observation. It's the machine, the camera. It doesn't have to be us. But that's always what everybody's talking about. I am back in the center of the universe. I'm the most important thing. There's no reality without me. How convenient. right? It just feels so good. I'm put right back in there. So let's run a thought experiment. Humans went extinct 150,000 years ago, and Neanderthals now run the show. Does reality still exist with Neanderthals as the observers? Or wipe out all the hominids, and it's just a bunch of dinosaurs running around, wipe out the mammals, whatever. Still does reality exist? Did they count as observers, right? So, and this idea that with the observer, like something like reality doesn't exist without the observer, therefore the moon doesn't exist without an observer. If you don't see it, it isn't really there. Well, to quote Bill O'Reilly, tides come in, tides go out. Never a miscommunication. Therefore, there's a God. Right. So the tides work because of the moon. It doesn't matter whether they're observed or not. They happen anyway, and they will without us. Finally, I think what's really going on here is quantum mechanics is spooky and weird. And consciousness is spooky and weird. So what? I mean, that doesn't mean they're connected. Charlie Sheen is spooky and weird. But you don't need quantum physics to explain the tiger blood. It's just brain chemistry.
I think there's a deeper question than being asked right now than what is ultimate reality. What he's speaking about is perceptual reality, okay? Which is a very legitimate way of looking at things. But there's no question, and there's a neuroscientist here in our audience, and I think he'll agree, that what we experience as reality is actually an activity of the brain. And the brain in different species is quite different. For example, a honeybee's eye cells don't respond to ultraviolet, not to the usual wavelengths of light that you and I see. What does a honeybee see when it looks at a flower? A bat experiences the world as ultrasound. What's that experience like? A chameleon's eyeballs swivel on two different axes. I don't think anyone in this room can remotely imagine what the world looks like to a chameleon. So the nervous system and what we call external reality correspond to each other. But there are many kinds of nervous systems. And also, nervous systems are actually created through culture, through history, through relationships, through interactions, through storytelling. Nervous systems are not fixed. We now know the new science of neuroplasticity. I just met a month ago, I met with Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize for discovering telomerase many years ago. She just published a paper in the Academy of Sciences that within 4 months of meditative and contemplative practices, there are distinct changes in the so-called telomerase activity. Telomerase is an enzyme. And for an enzyme to go up 30%, there's got to be gene mediation. You've got to have transcription and translation. So the whole field of neuroplasticity, of genetic indeterminism, I don't know if you know, but within 4 months of lifestyle changes, including exercise, good sleep, good relationships, peace of mind, loving relationships, you can turn on 500 genes that actually influence things like autoimmune disease, inflammation, and so on. So, except for the 5% of people who have really mutated genes, like say Alzheimer's specific or Huntington's chorea, most of our genes can be turned on and off. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm influencing your neural networks, and I'm causing potentiation between neurons just through this interaction. And in order to do that, I have to go through your neuronal genes. I have to actually translate and transcribe certain genetic information. We're influencing each other's genes right now in our interaction. We're influencing our neural networks. There's a lot of plasticity. And what we call perceptual reality is an experience dependent on what the nervous system is doing at that moment. And our nervous system is very flexible. You know, we can change it through our interactions. In fact, we're doing it right now through Twitter and through Facebook and through social networks. We're seeing that our minds are entangled. Our minds are what we call embodied as well as relational processes that regulate the flow of energy and information, not only in our bodies, but in our interactions. So is there an ultimate reality? The answer for me is yes. That ultimate reality is the ground of existence, which many Eastern wisdom traditions have called consciousness. Now there's an argument. What is consciousness? You'll hear different opinions of what is consciousness. Here's my definition of consciousness. Consciousness is the ground of existence. And now, by the way, when I say existence, I'm not meaning anything esoteric. I'm meaning that which exists. Consciousness is the ground of existence that differentiates into everything we call reality. Our thoughts. Can you have thoughts without consciousness? Answer is no. Our cognition, our perception, our behavior, our speech, our biology, our social interactions, our personal relationships, our environment, our interaction with the forces of nature, these are differentiated aspects of this very fundamental reality which we cannot conceive of because it is the source of our conception, which we cannot perceive because it's the source of our perception. See, when we say is there an ultimate reality and will science ever be able to disclose it, I will say no. Science will never be able to disclose it because science is an activity in consciousness. Science, mathematics, these are activities in consciousness. Can you imagine a world outside of consciousness? You can't, because you have no way of stepping out of consciousness. Okay, so you're experiencing me in your consciousness, I'm experiencing you in my consciousness, I'm experiencing body in my consciousness, and even my scientific methodologies are in consciousness. Now, you know, a very elegant book that Maladna wrote with Stephen Hawking, it says the universe came out of nothing, but at least I'm quoting accurately what I heard from Stephen. The universe came out of nothing, will continue to come out of nothing, and then he prefaced it, Stephen prefaced it anyway, because of a law called gravity. Okay, I am saying to you today that I hope by this evening, not with his thought experiment, but just through certain logic here, we will see the ultimate and climactic overthrow of the superstition of materialism. Because everything you call matter is non-material. Everything that you call physical is non-physical. If you go down to the most fundamental levels of nature, you go beyond, forget the observer effect, which is ridiculous, by the way he describes it, because according to him, the observers of the universe were created by the objects of the universe. Okay, so if you are there, an observer, which he says is a fiction, okay, but then he's using his mind to express his arguments.
My brain.
His brain, yeah. So we don't even have to address him. It's a brain. Okay? It's a brain. We are all zombies. We have no free will. We have no insight. We have no intuition. We have no creativity. We have no imagination. We have no choice. These are all my synaptic networks. You know, when in fact, even the synaptic networks are made out of atoms. The atoms are subatomic particles, and the particles are not things. The essential nature of the material world is that it's not material. The essential nature of the physical world is it's not physical. The essential stuff of the universe is non-stuff. Okay, now the question is, what is this non-stuff from where we all come? Is it just an empty void, or could it be the womb of creation? Does nature go to exactly the same place to create a galaxy of stars, a cluster of nebulas, a rainforest, a human body, or a thought? So the question is, let us figure out today what is the relationship between consciousness, energy, information, and matter. Could they all be the same thing in different disguises?